Hello, Steve Mills here, and welcome to another podcast. It's great to be back sharing with you some ideas, and I got a fantastic idea for you today. In fact, I've got a really powerful question for you. How much thinking time do you currently have in your business? Now, you're probably thinking, what thinking time, Steve? Don't you realise how busy I am? Busy doing it, make it, shipping it, selling it. I've got no time to sit down and think. Come on, be reasonable, Steve. Well, my question for you is, how is that working out so far? And if you're like most businesses, the answer is not very good. You know, if you're like most businesses that I meet, the first time I meet them, the reason they come to me is they need to do and want to do better. You may be aware of a book based on that question, really. And that book was written by a guy called Napoleon Hill. It was written in 1935. And it's a book called Think and Grow Rich. I strongly recommend you go to Amazon and buy it. It's a little book. It will cost you $7.99 I've got on the back of my copy of it. So, you know, this is not going to cost you a fortune. And yet, reading it and more importantly, implementing the ideas in it could make you millions. And now you're thinking, oh yeah, Steve, I've heard that before. You know, how many times have I been promised, you know, come on this workshop, sign up to that program, and, you know, this time next year we'll be millionaires, to quote Del Boy. But the truth is, you know, it's all about what you do with what you learn, not what you learn. And, you know, learning stuff is not going to make any difference to you until and unless you implement. The problem is what to implement. How do you prioritize things? And the answer to that is actually thinking time. You need to allocate some time for thinking. Let me ask you a question. How much time in the last year have you allocated? You know, if you look back in your diary right now and said, right, okay, my thinking time in the last year has been X amount of hours, how much is that? You know, if you're like most businesses, the truth is, it's where you're in the car. That's probably thinking time. But how often have you been in the car and, you know, your mind's wandered and you've actually come up with a really good idea, but you're in the car. And by the time you get to the end of the journey, you've forgotten what that idea was in the first place. Or, you know, I sometimes get ideas for whatever reason, sort of in the middle of the night. Anybody ever do that? You know, you wake up and, you know, and you doze back off and again you've thought it, you forgot it. But my point is, you know, if you actually sat down and actually allocated some time to thinking, then, you know, do you think you could come up with some really good answers? I suppose the real key to that question is, what are you going to think about? You know, there's no point just saying, right, okay, I'm going to do this, Steve, sitting down with a blank expression on your face and thinking, right, okay, Steve, yeah, I'm ready. This is thinking time. Okay. Not really sure what to think about. So we need to think about a question. Now, we could think about an okay question, or we could come up with a brilliant question. Have you got any brilliant questions that you could ask yourself? You know, I'm not here to give you the question that you need to ask yourself. But, you know, just thinking of a couple that it might be worth you sitting down and thinking about it is, you know, questions like, you know, how could you be more profitable? You know, would it be worth sitting down and actually spending half an hour or an hour or maybe even a day trying to, answer that question? How could you be more profitable? Another great one I heard a little while ago is, how big would your business be right now if you'd never lost a client? Or another question, maybe a better one, is could you do to make sure that you keep your customers, to make it an absolute no-brainer that they're going to stay with you and they would be crazy to leave? You know, there are loads of different questions. You know, what about, you know, how much money would you have now if you hadn't have made the 3 biggest financial mistakes in your business, how much money would you, we've all made mistakes. I've made more than most probably. But what I try to do whenever possible is to learn from those mistakes. So, what would your biggest 3 mistakes be in terms of the financial side of your business, and what could you do to either turn that around or, to learn from it to make sure you don't make those mistakes again? Some simple questions from a marketing point of view. How could you get more business from referral? How could you improve the effectiveness of your team? How could you become a better leader and more organized? How could you reduce the amount of time you work in your business? These are all great questions to sit down and think about, but the biggest problem is that most people spend their time doing it, making it, shipping it, selling it, getting the next one out, and so on and so forth. We're like busy fools in business. We have so many jobs, and often the smaller the business, the more jobs we do. When we start to grow our business, we can afford to pay people to take over some of those jobs. But, in a one-man business, we're everything, bottle washer, strategic planner, head of operations, head of marketing, head of financial services, bookkeeper, you name it. So the question again is, or my recommendation again is, think about thinking time. Just allocate some time. It could be one evening, once a week. You're going to sit down with a question. Monday evening, 7 o'clock is thinking time. It's better than watching Coronation Street. Trust me. It's not that there's anything against Corrie, I know that. But seriously, allocate some time. Get up an hour earlier in the morning. I personally, I'm more creative. I'm better. I'm more switched on. Around about 9, 10 o'clock, I wake up in the morning a little bit tired often. My best time of day is probably, between 9 and 1, something like that. Now, I know that's core business time, but, once a week or perhaps even just once a month, you can sit down and come up with some ideas and ways in which you can grow your business. So that's sort of all I've got to say, really. Allocate some thinking time and ask yourself a great question, a variety of different great questions in that time. How can you get more leads in your business? Might be one that, I might ask you, and therefore you should be asking yourself. So that's about it. Final point, if you want help growing your business, I'd love to be your coach. I'd love to be the person there to push you, to make sure that you did some thinking time, to make sure that you took actions that you promised yourself that you would take. I would be your coach. I would be your bully, if you were, but in a nice way, I like to think. And I would be the person that makes you step up to the plate and to take the actions that you promised yourself and you promised me you would take. You can do that in 2 ways. You can work one-to-one with me on my results program. That program's taken me 20 years to put together, and it's a fantastic 12-month program of business growth. Or you can do exactly the same thing as part of a group. So obviously that's not as expensive, working one-to-one with me, as being part of a group and paying, let's say, 1/8 of the cost of my time. So either way, give us a call. Very happy to set up a free one-to-one results business review. Just give me a call. My telephone number is 01256 242 272. Thanks very much for listening, and as ever, take action. Thank you.